Hilchos Temidin Umusafin Perek Chi, the laws of the daily and the additional sacrifices and services in the temple, chapter 9. The last couple of days we've discussed the Musaf, the additional sacrifices that were brought on the different holidays. We started with Rosh Chodesh, the new month, we went to Pesach, and on that topic learned about the Omer offering. Then we went to Shavuos, and we saw the Shtei HaLechem, that was yesterday, the two breads, and today we're focused on Rosh Hashanah. It's the next holiday that comes in the calendar, in the Torah calendar, which begins in Nisan. You have Pesach, Shavuos, then Rosh Hashanah. Fascinating, we're starting the month of Elul, preparing for Rosh Hashanah, so a great time to learn about this. As we're going to see, there's something unique about the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, which is going to open up a whole topic that's going to become the subject of the majority of the chapter, which is what do you do when faced with different sacrifices that have to be brought together? How do we determine the order of importance and which one gets precedence? And the reason for that is going to become immediately clear when we talk about Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah, besides for being a holiday, is also Rosh Chodesh, is also a new month. And sometimes Rosh Hashanah can fall out on Shabbos. All three of those elements require a Musaf, an additional offering of their own. Shabbos gets a Musaf, Rosh Chodesh gets a Musaf, and Rosh Hashanah gets a Musaf. That's going to cause the question, which one do we bring first? Which will lead into the discussion in general of what we do first when it comes to sacrifices in the temple. It says the Rambam halacha Aleph be'echad be'tishrei makrivin musaf hayom. On the first of Tishrei, the new year, Rosh Hashanah, we offer a musaf for the day. Par, the ayil, v'shiva kvasim hakal elis, 1 bull, 1 ram, 7 sheep, all burnt offerings. The other holidays so far was 2 bulls. This is 1 bull. Usi'ir chatas hane'echeles, and a goat which was brought as a sin offering, the type of sin offering which was eaten. It says that Rambam bezeh musaf hayom, this is the musaf. Uniquely for this day, yesar al musaf resh chodesh, hakarev b'chol resh chodesh. Over and above the fact that today is the new month, and we have to bring the musaf for the new month, which is 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 sheep, and 1 goat. Lefichach, therefore, im chal liyas b'Shabbos, if the new year fell out also to be on Shabbos, like it was this past year, hayusham shloisha musafin, we then had 3 musafs. Musaf Shabbos, and Musaf Rosh Chodesh, and Musaf Hayom. For being Shabbos, for being the new month, and for being the day of Rosh Hashanah. Which begs the question, halacha beis, v'keitzad sidur hakravasan, what is the order of the offering in this case? It says the Rambam, the cardinal rule is, we go by what's more frequent. Musaf Shabbos Tchila, v'acharav Musaf HaChodesh, v'acharav Musaf Yom Tov. First, the Musaf for Shabbos, second, the Musaf for the new month, third, the Musaf for the holiday. Shekala tadir mechaveiroi, because whatever is more frequent than its friend comes before its friend. This is a rule that we apply across Jewish law. For example, every morning we put on talis and tefillin. We always put on the talis first before the tefillin. Why? Because the talis is worn more frequently. Tefillin we don't wear on Shabbat, we don't wear on holidays. Talis we wear every day. Because it's more frequent, it comes first. Same thing over here in sacrifices. Shabbos is more frequent than a new month, and a new month is more frequent than a once-a-year holiday. So the Shabbos Musaf comes first, then the new month Musaf, then the holiday Musaf. And now the Rambam throws in another halacha related to this. Nothing to do with Rosh Hashanah, but it also has to do with precedence. V'chein, so too, there was a rule in the Holy Temple. If you have 2 things, one is more holy than the other, the holy one comes before the less holy one. As we're going to see some examples, but I'll just give one right now. We've been learning in the laws of sacrifices about what's called Kodshei Kodshim and Kodshim Kalim. Highest holy sacrifices and lesser holy sacrifices. If 2 such sacrifices came to the temple together, the holier status one will be offered first, before the lesser holy one. Which now brings out another interesting question. Haya lefan of tadiru mekudash. What do you do if you have 2 things? One is more frequent than the other, but the second is more holy than the first. Which rule do you follow? One rule says bring the frequent one first. One rule says bring the holier one first. Each one carries one advantage. Halacha rules, yakdim eze mehem sheyirtze. You may preface whichever one you want. Which is an interesting halacha. Why would halacha have to weigh in on that? As the Rabbi once spoke at length. If neither rule trumps the other, so of course the person will bring whatever he wants. The fact that halacha weighs in sounds like there's a halacha to do whatever you want. What is the significance, the meaning of this halacha? The Rabbi explained psychologically, mystically. We learned way back in the Rambam's fourth book, in the context of divorce, that if a Jew doesn't want to give a divorce that he's supposed to give, the court can force him until he says, I want to. And the Rambam asks, what good is that? If you force somebody to say, I want, they don't really want. And the Rambam told us a very powerful, powerful concept about a Jewish person. That every single Jew, deep down inside, really wants to do that what Hashem wants him to do. The deepest ratzon of a Jew, deepest will, desire of a Jew is to do that which Hashem wants. It's only that the Yetzer Hara covers over. And the forcing removes the power of the Yetzer Hara and reveals the innermost will. Which tells you that the nature of the Jew's inner will is to constantly be in alignment with Hashem. So the Rebbe applies that principle here. What does it mean that there's one that's more frequent, one that's more holy? You know, the name of these laws is Temidin Umusafin, daily, consistent, and additional. As Jews, we're faced with the things that we have to do consistently, and then the extras, things that come once in a while, which we actually like to do with more passion because it's more exciting. Sometimes you have something that has two ways to look at it. There's a consistent thing and there's an exciting thing. Which one do you give precedence to? There's a frequent thing and there's a holier thing. Which one do you give more precedence to? So the truth is that every situation demands a case-by-case analysis. Sometimes it'll be more important to do the consistent one. Sometimes it'll be more important to do the holier one. How is a Jew supposed to take the responsibility for that decision? Says halacha, if you go back to your innermost will, if you submit yourself to Hashem, the choice you will make will reflect that which Hashem truly wanted you to do in this case. Yakdim eza mehem sheyirtza means give precedence to the one that you truly want, the one that your will, which is aligned with Hashem's will, wants. How will you know that? If you do it because halacha says so. If you choose the one you want, not because what you want, but because you say, I'm giving it up to Hashem, the choice you make will be the right choice. That's what the Rambam means. Yakdim eza mehem sheyirtza. Do one first, in the context of submission to Hashem, and that will be the right one for this occasion. Fascinating concept that the Rebbe developed in a wonderful sikha. Halacha Gimel, returning to the main rule. You're supposed to slaughter, or offer, or deal with a more frequent thing before a less frequent thing. Avaroi shachach. What if you transgressed the rule, or you forgot the rule? V'shachat as she'enei tader, and you first slaughtered the non-frequent sacrifice, or the one that was less holy, in the case of the holy and less holy. Makrivai. If you already slaughtered the sacrifice, finish offering it, and then go back and slaughter the more frequent or the more holy one. If they were both slaughtered at once, two Kohanes could do that, one Kohen slaughtering this one Kohen slaughtering that one. So even if you didn't give precedence for the slaughtering, you could at least give precedence at the next stage, the sprinkling of the blood. The person who slaughtered the less frequent and the less holy one should mix its blood so it shouldn't congeal till the blood of the more frequent or the more holy one is sprinkled. And now the Rambam opens this up to a wider context, forgetting for a minute about the musaf sacrifices for the holidays. We're going to consider a bunch of different cases just within the world of sacrifices. What comes first? Dam hachatos kaidim ladam ha'ila, says the Rambam. If you have a sin offering and a burnt offering that were slaughtered, there's blood of each waiting to be sprinkled. Which one do you sprinkle first? The blood of the sin offering comes before the blood of the burnt offering. Because it is the blood of the sin offering which actually achieves atonement. The way the Talmud describes it, the sin offering is when somebody messes up, you first get somebody to achieve forgiveness. Then you can send a gift. The chatas is the basic atonement asking for forgiveness. And the oila, the burnt offering, is the gift that follows up. If you haven't achieved atonement, you can't send gifts. Gifts will actually be offensive. So you first must bring the burnt offering and then the sin offering and then the burnt offering. On the other hand, though, evrei oila, if it's the limbs, not the blood, the limbs of the oila which are going to be burnt on the altar, or the limbs of the sin offering that are going to be burnt on the altar, the parts, certain parts go to the altar from the sin offering. Here, the burnt offering comes first. Because when it comes to the burnt offering, everything goes to the altar. Sin offering, part goes to the altar, part is eaten by the Kohanim. It's a little bit of a less status of importance. So the oila gets first. Dam chatas ve'evrei oila. What if you have the first of both categories? You have the blood of the chatas, which in the case of the blood takes precedence, and you have the limbs of the oila, which in the case of the limbs takes precedence. Which of these two gets precedence? Eza sheyirtze yaktim. You can give precedence to whichever one you want. Or, translated mystically, whichever one you choose to give precedence to, that will be the one that you truly want, meaning that's the one that Hashem truly wants. Same thing if you have the both of these, that were really second place in both scenarios, the blood of the oila versus the limbs, or the parts of the chatas that are sacrificed, dam oila v'dam asham, or the blood of a burnt offering versus the blood of a guilt offering, which doesn't achieve atonement in the same way that a sin offering does. Eza sheyir tzayakdim, give precedence to whichever one you want, and that one will be the one that truly Hashem wants. Halacha vav, forget the blood, let's go even a step back. Chatos kodemes la'oila. In general, if you have a sin offering and a burnt offering, the sin offering gets precedence to the burnt offering. Afilu chatas ha'oif kodemes la'ilas behema. Even a bird sin offering comes before an animal burnt offering. You would think the animal is more important. No, it's the category of offering. The sin offering comes before the burnt offering. Shanemar, as it says, in one of the cases where a person has to bring both a sin and a burnt offering, it says, Es asher lachatos rishayna. You bring it to the Kohen offers the one belonging to the sin offering first. This teaches us binyan av, general principle. L'chol chatos shehi kaidemes la'ila haba'ima. Every sin offering comes before the burnt offering that comes with it. This is an example, and we'll soon actually talk about it. The woman who gives birth has to bring a sin offering and a burnt offering. Her sin offering, even though it's a bird, comes before the burnt offering, even though it's an animal. V'chein b'shas hafrasha, even before the actual offering. When you set aside the sacrifices in your home, mafrish achatos tchila, v'achar kach ha'ila, you first separate, put aside the sin offering and then the burnt offering. With one exception. But korban nesachag einay kain. On Sukkot, as we'll learn tomorrow, there was a special musaf for each day of Sukkot. It doesn't follow the rule of sin offering before burnt offering, rather ala krevin al seder akosov. They are brought as the order described in the verse, shanemar, because in the verse it says, kimishpatam, you have to bring them as their law is. As their law implies, as it's written. Bring it in the order that it's written, even though it violates this rule of chatas first. What does it actually say in the Torah? It says burnt offerings first. Ketzad, what does that mean? First you bring the bulls, then the rams, then the lambs, the sheep, that are all burnt offerings, and only afterwards the goats, even though the goats are a sin offering and all the ones before are burnt offerings. There's another exception. In the case of an inadvertent act committed by the community related to idol worship. We'll have a whole section of laws in the next book about inadvertent commissions of sins. When the Beis Din, when the court rules erroneously about some area in halacha, which would usually carry excision penalty, if most of the Jewish people follows them, every tribe has to bring a korban. That's called the par helem davar shel tzibur, the bull brought when something was hidden from the community, when they made a mistake about a ruling. If they made a mistake in ruling, not about anything in the Torah, but about idol worship, there's even a more special ceremony. That's with a bull and a goat for every tribe. It's called the par avodah zara, the goat of the idol worship. So the Rambam talks about the idol worship element. In that case, Shehin Mevi'in par oilo seir chatas, where the people have to bring a bull as an oila and a goat as a chatas. Oh, wrong picture here. The bull should be oila and the goat should be chatas. Hapar kaidim. You nevertheless bring the bull first, even though it's a burnt offering. Shanem Rabbi kamishpat, because it also says the same word there. Do it as the rule is in the Torah, as the order is. First the bull, then the goat. Talking about these bulls that are brought for erroneous rulings, says the Rambam, the bull brought by the high priest comes before, takes precedence to the bull that comes as a result of an erroneous ruling of the court in relationship to other areas of the Torah. The high priest also, if he rules mistakenly for himself, has to bring a special bull called the Par Kohen Mashiach, the bull of the anointed priest. That one, if the high priest made a mistake and the court made a mistake, and there's two bulls waiting to be brought, first the high priest's one, then the community's one. Upar Helim, Kedem Lepar Avodah Zara. The bull brought for an erroneous ruling in the rest of the Torah takes precedence to the bull that's brought for a mistake in relationship to idol worship. So if the court made two mistakes, one about a general rule, one about an idol worship rule, and they're bringing the bulls, the bull for the general comes before the bull for the idols. Upar Avodah Zara, Kedem Lasar Shalah. Within this Avodah Zara, the bull comes before the goat. Even though it's just said, the bull is a burnt offering, the goat is a sin offering, that's the order written in the Torah. The goat related to idol worship takes precedence to a goat brought by a king. If a king commits a sin, his way of atoning for it is by bringing a male goat. So the communal goat for idol worship committed by the community comes before the goat brought by the king, because the king is an individual. But the goat belonging to a king takes precedence over the goat brought by a regular Jew who wants to bring a sin offering. When two individuals are bringing a sin offering, one chooses to bring a goat, one chooses to bring a sheep, the goat comes first, even though they're both a sin offering. Because the goat is more encompassing. The goat can be brought both to atone for idol worship and for other excision penalties for which you bring a sin offering. Whereas the sheep can only be brought for general sins, not for idol worship. Returning to the other rule about the sin offering coming before the burnt offering, even the sin offering, the bird of a birthing woman, comes before her sheep, which is a burnt offering. Now from here out, we're going to be discussing 9 levels in the hierarchy of sacrifices, and the Rambam is going to go in order down the ladder and explain why each one is higher on the ladder. A sin offering comes before a guilt offering. What does the sin offering have over a guilt offering? Its blood is applied to all 4 corners of the Mizbeach and the base, more so than the guilt offering. In general, all sin offerings in the Torah come before all guilt offerings, except for when it comes to the tzaras, a person who has lesions and brings a sin offering and a guilt offering, his guilt offering comes first, because his sacrifices are of a different nature. They come to make him fit each sacrificial meat, different thing. Guilt offering comes before the sin offering. Okay, that's step 1. Chatas is the highest on the ladder. Then comes the asham, guilt offering. The guilt offering, ha'asham kaidem latayda le'il nazir. The guilt offering takes precedence over the next 2, thanksgiving offering and the ram offered by a Nazirite, which are basically the same thing, except as we'll soon see, the taida is accompanied by more types of bread than the Nazirite's ram is. So they're usually put together. The asham comes before these 2, because the asham is the holy of holies. It can only be eaten inside the temple courtyard, whereas the taida and the il nazir are kadashim kalim, they're lighter sacrifices that can be eaten in the whole of Jerusalem. Now we'll soon get into these 2 for a second, why Toida is higher than Il Nazir, but first the Rambam addresses the generality of the category. Toida v'Il Nazir, kaidmim lishlamim. The thanksgiving offering and the ram of the Nazirite together precede any peace offering, because they can only be eaten for 1 day, versus a peace offering eaten for 2 days. And they also come with bread, versus a peace offering doesn't have any bread. And therefore, for the same reason, within that category, the thanksgiving offering comes before the ram of the Nazirite, because it has 4 types of breads, 4 types of flour offerings, versus the lamb of the Nazirite that only has 2 types of offerings, but also is in the same category, only be eaten for 1 day, and therefore it precedes the shlamim. Shlamim, talking about the peace offering now, peace offering is 5th on the ladder. It comes before a firstborn animal, which is also holy. We'll have a whole set of laws in the next book. Because they require to be sprinkled twice on the altar, on the 2 diagonal corners, versus the firstborn only requires 1 sprinkling. And they also require leaning on the animal, waving it, and the libations, the flour, wine, and the oil that would accompany every sacrifice, only comes with the peace offering, not with the firstborn offering. And therefore the firstborn is lower on the ladder. Nevertheless, firstborn animals offering comes before the tithe offering. Every year, you take all your animals into a pen that were born that year, let them out 1 by 1. The 10th one was holy and had to be offered to Hashem. So the Bechor is better or more, it takes precedence over the Meiser. Because its holiness is from the womb, it's born holy. The Meiser becomes holy. By dint of the count, 10th one becomes holy. But the firstborn is born holy. Also the Bechor can only be eaten by Kohanim, versus the Meiser can be eaten by everybody. HaMeiser, the tithe animal, is definitely more important than birds' offerings. Because first of all, it's a slaughtered offering, it's an animal. And there are parts of it, the blood and the innards that are sacrificed on the altar, that are holy of holies, versus the birds don't have those parts. Birds are almost on the bottom of the list, but because they're at least live, they come before flour offerings. Because they have types of blood that are sprinkled on the altar, not so by flour. And on the bottom of the chain, you have flour offerings. Now, consider this case. You have a bird that's a sin offering, and meiser. So when it came to the bird sin offering versus an animal burnt offering, the bird sin offering got precedence. But if it's a bird sin offering versus meiser, ha-meiser kaidem mipnei shu zevach. The meiser comes first because it is a zevach, a slaughtered sacrifice. The Torah's precedence of sin offerings to burnt offerings is clear, but it's only within those two sacrifices, not within the meiser. But once you include a burnt offering in the equation, if there was a bird sin offering, meiser, and an animal burnt offering, since the burnt offering, a regular sacrifice, comes before the meiser. Meiser is way down on the ladder. When it comes to a competition between bird sin offerings and animal burnt offerings, bird sin offerings win. That's the one time the bird gets actually on top of the ladder. You have to bring first the bird sin offering, then the regular burnt offering, and then the meiser. Halacha tes, similar laws related to precedents. What if you had multiple types of animals within one species of sacrifice? You're bringing a bunch of animals as a peace offering, but they're all types of animals. In which order do we go? We follow kind of like the order of Sukkot. Bulls come before rams because they have more libations, more quantity of flour, wine, and oil. Same thing, the rams come before the sheep. They also have more libations than a sheep. Sheep come before goats because more of them get sacrificed on the altar. Because one of the parts that are sacrificed from sheep are the tail, but goats don't have a tail. So sheep come before goats. Returning to 2 days ago, the Omer offering was brought with animals. The offering of barley comes before the sheep. And the two breads that were brought on Shavuos. With two sheep, the breads come before the sheep. What is the reason for that? This is the rule. The thing that comes for the day takes precedence over the thing that comes because of the bread. In other words, the Omer and the Shtei Alechem are related to the holiday. They're being offered because of the holiday. The animals are being offered as an extension of those breads. So the breads come first. Halacha Yud, more laws of precedence. Minchas ha'ish kedemes leminchas ha'isha. The flour offering of a man comes before the flour offering of a woman. Minchas chitim kedemes leminchas sa'irim. Flour offering of wheat flour comes before a barley offering. Minchas choyte kedemes leminchas nedava. The offering of a sinner who's atoning for himself takes precedence over the offering of a voluntary person, because it comes for a sin. Minchas nedava or minchas saita. But if you have a regular voluntary flour offering and the flour offering of a suspected adulteress, you can offer whatever one you want first, and again, whichever one you offer first will be the one that Hashem truly wants. Yud Aleph. Let's leave the realm of animal sacrifices, just things that accompany sacrifices and could also be brought on their own. Menachos kedmin liyayin. Flour offerings come before wine. The hayayin kedmin l'shemen. Wine that's being brought alone comes before oil. The hashemen kedmin l'levaina. Oil takes precedence over frankincense. Ulevaina kedemas lamelach. Frankincense takes precedence over salt. Umelach kedem le'etzim. Salt takes precedence over wood. Masai says that Rambam, when is this? And this applies to the entire chapter essentially. All these competitions of one comes before the other. When are we talking about? Bisman shabo kulan ke'echad, if they all came to the temple as one. Aval habar rishon, but if somebody comes in first, followed by somebody who comes in second, first come, first serve. Karev rishon, v'haba acharen, karev acharen. Whoever comes first gets his offering offered first, who comes later gets his offerings offered later. Another general rule, kol hakedem ba'akrava, kedem ba'achila. If two sacrifices compete, and one of them is supposed to be offered first, that one is also supposed to be eaten first. When the Kohanim come to eat their sacrifices, they have sin offering before guilt offering. They have to partake of the sin offering before the guilt offering. Halacha Yud Gimel, the time frame of sacrificial eating can also play into this game. You have two of the same sacrifice. They're both peace offering. One was offered yesterday, one was offered today. Peace offerings could be eaten for 2 days. So yesterday's is going to expire before today's. Yesterday's must be eaten first because their time is coming close. On the other hand, if you have yesterday's peace offering and today's sin or guilt offering, peace offering could be eaten for 2 days. Sin offering, guilt offering only be eaten for today. The sin offering and the guilt offering come first, even though you also have the issue of expiring time for the peace offering, because the sin offering and the guilt offering are the holiest of holy level sacrifices. Peace offering is kachim kalim, lower level. Therefore, the chatas v'asham are to be eaten before the shlamim.